I think it would be fair to say that both William and Harry are never going to be the best of chums again. And that is my opinion. And I think the hurt runs too deep, particularly for William, and I think when you studied also just the things that they did as a couple to the late Queen. William adored Queen Elizabeth, as all of us did, but obviously he had a very special relationship.
What if the story started very differently than we've been told? New claims are surfacing about what Prince William may have known early on about Meghan Markle, and the timing is raising serious questions. As details begin to circulate, the narrative takes an unexpected turn, hinting that the signs might have been there from the beginning. If true, this could completely reshape how everything is understood today. Make no mistake, the relationship between Prince William and Prince Harry is not just damaged, it is fundamentally changed, perhaps forever. This is no longer about a simple disagreement between brothers, no longer about a few harsh words said in frustration. What we are witnessing now is the slow, irreversible unraveling of something that once felt unbreakable. And if you really look closely at everything that has happened over the last few years, you begin to understand why. Once upon a time, these two were inseparable. They stood side by side through moments that most people could never even imagine enduring. The loss of Diana, Princess of Wales, didn't just shape their childhood, it bonded them in a way that felt permanent. For years, the public saw them not just as brothers, but as a unit. Different personalities, yes, but always connected, always united. That's why what has happened since feels so stark, so difficult to accept. Because it isn't just a falling out, it's the breaking of something people believed would never break. For William, the situation goes far deeper than headlines or public statements. His entire identity has been built around duty, continuity, and protecting the institution he was born into. But more importantly, it has been shaped by loyalty to his family, to his grandmother, and to the crown itself. His relationship with Queen Elizabeth II was not just respectful, it was deeply personal. He admired her, trusted her, and understood Tishut. He weight she carried better than most, so when events unfolded in the later years of her life that many believe caused her distress, it wasn't something William could simply overlook. That's the part people often underestimate. This isn't just about disagreements over lifestyle or independence. This is about perceived hurt inflicted at a time when the family, and especially the Queen, was at its most vulnerable. And for someone like William, that kind of thing doesn't just pass with time. It stays. It reshapes how you see the person responsible. It changes everything. Then comes the issue of narrative, the constant shifting, the rewriting of the past. When Prince Harry sat down with Oprah Winfrey, he told the world he felt trapped, that he had seen behind the curtain, that leaving was about freedom and survival. It was powerful, emotional, and undeniably impactful. But fast forward, and suddenly the tone changes. Now we hear phrases like, "I was born to serve," as if that identity was never rejected in the first place. And this is where the real problem begins, because when someone changes their story without clearly explaining why, it doesn't come across as growth, it comes across as contradiction. And for someone like William, who values consistency and discretion, that inconsistency is incredibly difficult to accept. It makes trust almost impossible to rebuild. The publication of Spare only deepened that divide. This wasn't just another royal book filled with vague anecdotes and polite reflections. It was raw, direct, and at times brutally honest. It exposed private moments, detailed personal grievances, and brought internal family dynamics into the public domain in a way that had never been done before. And once those words were printed, once they were read around the world, there was no going back. You cannot unpublish a memory. You cannot erase a public accusa. Tien, you cannot ask people to forget what they have already seen. And yet there have been signs, subtle but noticeable, that Harry himself may now wish parts of that narrative had been handled differently. The reluctance to discuss the book openly, the absence of follow-up promotion, the quiet distancing from some of its more controversial elements, it all suggests a shift. But again, the problem is the same. The shift isn't clearly explained. It simply happens, and that leaves people questioning everything. Now, when you bring Meghan Markle into the picture, the situation becomes even more complex. She represents a completely different approach to life, to image, to public engagement. Where the monarchy is rooted in tradition, she is rooted in reinvention. Where the royal system values restraint, she embraces visibility. And while that contrast can work in some situations, within the rigid structure of the monarchy, it creates tension.
And now to see this seemingly irreparable rift is quite shocking, really.
Yeah, I don't know. This one's going to get a lot of people talking. And especially, the whole legal drama with Meghan and the Daily Mail, and then the witness statement from Jason, and that having tied to Prince William. Like, that's a big accusation.
Take the coronation of King Charles III, a moment that will be written into history books for generations, a moment where family, tradition, and continuity all come together. Harry attended, but Meghan did not. She remained in California with Archie. Now, depending on your perspective, that decision can be interpreted in very different ways. Some see it as a personal choice, a mother prioritizing her child. Others see it as something else entirely, a symbolic absence, a deliberate distance from the institution at its most important moment. And that's the thing about royal actions. They are never just personal, they are always symbolic. Every presence means something, every absence means something, and in a family where symbolism is everything, those meanings carry weight. The issue of identity, Sussex versus Mountbatten-Windsor, adds another layer. Names in the royal world are not just labels, they are markers of lineage, of history, of belonging. When those names are reshaped, repurposed, or presented differently in public, it doesn't go unnoticed. It raises questions about intention, about direction, about what exactly is being built outside the traditional structure. For William, all of this feeds into a much larger concern, the future of the monarchy itself. Because while Harry and Meghan operate in a world driven by media cycles, public reactions, and personal branding, William is thinking in decades, not days. He is thinking about stability, about continuity, about how the institution will be perceived not just now, but in the future. And that is why his response is not loud, it is not dramatic, it is not reactive, it is controlled, it is deliberate, it is quiet. Instead of confronting, he distances. Instead of responding, he restructures. Instead of engaging, he refocuses. Because in his position, the goal is not to win an argument, it is to protect an institution.
The secretary denies that he ever issued this, ever leaked this information. And then the Sussexes get the final word when their lawyers say, in fact, or they issue a formal statement saying, oh no, we never authorized him to issue this information. So it's another swipe at William. And it makes it rather obvious that the tensions between William, I think they're not just simmering or festering anymore. I mean, I think this is just a chasm that isn't going to be breached at any time soon.
Yeah, no, it was interesting that they decided to put that disclaimer at the end and not as a button to that story when they were talking about it previously. So like you said, they try to definitely get the last word in. And it seems like the tension is more so between Harry and William and not so much Harry and King Charles.
This is why reconciliation feels so unlikely, at least for now. Because reconciliation requires acknowledgement, clarity, and consistency. It requires both sides to step back, to reflect, to rebuild trust privately before anything can change publicly. And at the moment, none of those conditions seem to exist. Instead, what we see is continued divergence. Two paths moving further and further apart, one rooted in tradition, the other in independence. One focused on stability, the other on reinvention. Neither necessarily wrong, but fundamentally incompatible in the same space. And that is perhaps the most difficult truth of all. Because this is not just a story about disagreement. It is a story about difference, a difference in values, a difference in priorities, a difference in how life itself is approached. Once those differences become this pronounced, relationships don't just heal with time. They evolve into something else entirely, something more distant, more formal, more cautious. It is fair to say that William and Harry may never return to what they once were. Not because they don't share history, not because they don't share blood, but because too much has happened in the space between those things. And in the world they were born into, that space, once broken, is almost impossible to close again. So, what do you think? Did William really see the warning signs early on, or is this just speculation being blown out of proportion? And how might this change the way people view everything that's happened since? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more royal updates you won't want to miss. See you in the next one.